driven in large parts by the kind of uniqueness of VR, I suppose, which is the immersion that you feel through being locked into that content. And allied to that, it makes those experiences very memorable as well. So we asked them a few weeks afterwards what they remembered about the piece that they'd just watched, and recall is really good for those experiences. And then finally, on kind of people's willingness to pay for this kind of thing, there were very high rates. So we gave them scenarios that sort of presupposed that they already had owned the headset at the home, and then said kind of how much they would be willing to pay for the pieces of content, and that came out at about sort of £7 to £8 per piece of content. And then we asked them again about their willingness to pay in terms of a sort of arcade-style scenario where they went out with a bunch of friends and experienced a few of those things in a group at a sort of arcade or VR cinema, essentially. And they were essentially willing to pay sort of double or triple that, so between sort of £60 to £20. So yeah, it looks like the audiences that we tested this on were very, presupposed this kind of experience, and that ranged across those that both had and hadn't experienced VR on the Vive before. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I think taught us a lot about what the individual drivers of impact were for audience experience.
Great. You guys got any examples or any insight you can share about the kind of audiences you've shown this to and how they respond? And
I mean, mostly where we come in is, again, kind of at particular events, and we come across very diverse audiences. So sometimes they're C-level executives, and obviously they respond very differently from, say, a student. At other events, we've noticed obviously that with younger people tend to, it's about the expectation of the medium. So quite often a younger person will come into a piece of VR content expecting it to be a game, and they might react to something and go, well, what do I do? What do I do? And then you have other people who maybe not so digital native, who will just stand there and won't interact with anything and won't even turn their head, because why would you turn your head? Everything's here. And so those people obviously need to be educated a bit more, and they expecting something probably a lot more passive. We do find that generally, I mean, almost exclusively the response to VR is always incredible, though a lot of time that's the first time around. And I think even that people who have come around again, I mean, people look forward to trying out a new piece of I know we talked a lot mostly about VR in this talk, as opposed to AR, but VR content. And I've heard it was very interesting, the research, because actually costing this, and we've been looking at actually releasing some stuff of our own stuff on the app stores, and one of the big things in my head has been, what do we price this at? And it's really hard to know. So let's say thank you for your
So taking notes.
Yeah. That's interesting, and actually we'll come back because we should talk a bit about AR as well, because we have spoken mostly about VR here, but just to pick up on that, I think it's quite an interesting question for any VR creator or would-be creator. There's such a diverse sort of audience and different audience expectations and capabilities out there using this new technology. Is the answer here, should we be trying to make content that works for both of those two users you just described, the one who's sort of expecting passive or more active, or is it just something that will naturally, people will get used to and that it will just become more normal over time?
I think if you create a piece of content, you're always thinking about your audience. I think it's very rare for, I mean, you do get projects where you go, this is for everyone, and you've probably all been in like a kind of meeting like that. We want this content to be available for everyone. There's a very small amount of content that really does apply to everyone. So yep. I think inevitably you're always going to tailor it to who you think your target market is, and you're going to have to take those factors about what their expectations are into account. Obviously at the moment that's very exaggerated because VR is such a new medium, that there aren't. I mean, that's a good thing because you can break it. There are no expectations really to break. But at the same time, it's very easy to overwhelm and confuse people.
Yeah.
So getting that balance right, we find ourselves. I think pacing is a really interesting one in terms of VR experiences. Early VR experiences tended to be very slow, and be very kind of cautious in terms of how they present information to people in VR. And we find actually that we get more and more aggressive in terms of the pacing and how we produce content, because we need people to keep engaged. And we test stuff all the time. We'll create a piece of content, we'll just put strangers on it, we'll watch them intently while they're using it. And the moment they kind of put their hands up and they're like about to take it off, we know we've got to do something to keep them back in that experience. So, yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, because that's one of the great things about this technology, right, is that we can track every movement that happens with that headset. So we know we can make heat maps. So we can see what people are looking at. We can see what people are interested in. We can see what it was that made someone pull that headset off. And so all of that information as it comes in will then help enrich the next project or the update to that project. So you can almost see through like matrix-like the data how the audience is reacting to your content. And so that's a really interesting thing, because in film and TV, when we want to do that, we have to pay researchers to bring people in and sit in front of a thing, put eye tracking technology on them, and spend quite a lot of time trying to get that information. Whereas with VR, if you work out how to do the right bits and pieces in Unity, it all comes for free.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and definitely about getting audience feedback all the way through. I think it's so valuable. I've never met anyone who regretted getting that, I think.
Yeah.
So I've just got a couple of questions, and then we will open it up to the floor. So we should talk about AR a bit, because I think it's sort of natural. We've focused a bit on VR because it's sort of been out there a bit longer for us for the last few years as something we can play with, but the AR content is starting to emerge. Has there been anything you've seen, or the kinds of things you've seen? I've seen a lot of demos, and very cool demos. But actually, are you starting to see anything that you think might actually stick?
So I would agree. We're in the phase of AR where we were with the DK1, which is like thrills and spills and roller coasters. It's lots of very fun, but often quite like fluffy stuff. It's see your face and you can spew rainbows or whatever. There's some interesting practical use cases for it, and you saw Apple showing being able to measure things, and IKEA being able to place virtual items in the real world. So there's lots of very, very practical. We're actually working on a project right now, which I can't talk about a huge amount, where we're looking at having a narrative experience that's entirely based in AR, and that it's actually it's using similar assets that we have in our VR experience to have a VR experience, and so. That's proving to be very exciting. So come September, I might be able to talk about it. So. Okay,
watch this space.
Yeah.
Tom, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think AR is really early. It's kind of almost, it feels to me like people have kind of rediscovered AR, because it's been around for it's been around for a while. Certainly with mobile applications, and there's been SDKs like Vuforia where you could detect a marker on the wall and have something appear, and the capabilities have been extended a bit more. But fundamentally, the way a lot of people experience AR is through a handheld device, and that is clearly not the best way to experience AR. And until it comes onto headsets, wearables, I think its application is going to be quite limited. We do have wearables. Obviously, we've got had the HoloLens for a while, which in my mind is just kind of, it's a prototype really. It's not ready for the mass market. Of course, we've got the Magic Leap, which is appearing this year, which I've not had a chance to have a go on. Maybe you guys have, but hopefully that'd be good. But I think it's going to be expensive. So but we've been working on quite a few AR projects more recently because people are interested in it. Things like they could be like Facebook activations. I think the thing about AR that's really happened is it's now everywhere. So you can access it through all like the Facebook platform, Instagram. It's coming to WhatsApp. It's going to be in your browser. So yeah, things like we've done the face things, the face recognition things. We've been doing stuff sort of recognizing contextual information within environments, for instance, to look at your credit history and stuff like that. It's kind of bizarre all the time, different use cases we have, but it's still a bit further down the line.
But it's good that it's low friction and it has a huge audience, which is basically the absolute antithesis of tethered VR, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my last question, and then we're going to open it up. I want just really quickly, as relatively seasoned VR viewers, what have you? What one piece have you seen in the last year that's sort of blown you away, that's made you think, reignited your excitement for it? I'll start with Tom.
Oh, right. We were discussing this earlier. So I'm going to say two of them because one was one I keep coming back to is Rec Room, and that was really around the social experience. I've played a lot of games, and I tend to play them for about probably an hour or two if they're good. But then I just kind of want to come back into an experience where there's other people, and I don't feel too overwhelmed with having to be really good at a game. I quite enjoy interacting with people in VR, even though it is actually, I feel, it can be quite intimidating sometimes actually, just like in real life. The other one on another level is Skyrim VR, which is a game. And that game's been around for a long time. In fact, hackers did the early VR mods they made for that game. It wasn't really VR native experience, but just being in an incredibly rich world that you're used to seeing on the screen. It's sort of like a fantasy game if you're not familiar with it. So you kind of you get to walk up mountains and down to valleys and role play and different elements. And it's one of the first games that really has a huge amount of content that you can explore, and they've adapted it for VR, and it's been immensely popular. So I think that's my other choice.
Great, thanks. Sam?
I think you guys will all have the advantage in terms of having watched way more VR and AR than I have. But one thing I'm really looking forward to over the next few years is the partnership work between Magic Leap and the Royal Shakespeare Company, that we're going to be doing a little bit of research on, and I can't say anything more on that for now. But I'm very excited about that and some of the possibilities there.
I'm going to do two too.
Okay.
Beat Saber, without shadow of a doubt,
Okay.
is one of the best things to ever happen to VR.
And explain what it is.
So
My
it's
face is
so
laughing,
simple.
but
It's
not.
think Guitar Hero with lightsabers. So essentially you've got cubes hurtling at you in time with music, and your job with these lightsabers is to slash them in time with the music. And I have lost hours of my life trying to become a dubstep Jedi. It's so much fun. And then last night I played a game for the first time, which just had my mouth open all the way through it. It's a game called Moss. And so it's a little platform. It's a platform game. You play this really ridiculously cute little mouse, who it's really great. You can easily get like a really nice emotional connection with it. But you, as a player, also play a character, so he can see you. If you look down in the water, you're like this giant thing in a kabuki mask. And as you're controlling him, he'll get to a bit he can't do, and you as a person in the experience can reach out and grab something in the environment, pull it out, and then control him to jump on it. And when he does, he turns around and says thanks, and you just really feel like you're in this little guy's world and participating in it, which is something you can't do in any other medium. So Moss is pretty special.
Great. I'll throw mine into the mix. So mine, I think, for the last year. One of my favourite things has been a piece called Dispatch by Hibby Dragons, and as a piece of narrative content I thought it was brilliant because It's about an emergency services dispatcher. He's receiving calls. He's hearing all these emergencies going on, but he can't see them. And as he receives these calls, these visualizations of what's happening sort of appear around you. And the reason I liked it was because I thought it was such a brilliantly chosen story for the medium, because it was very audio led, but the visuals they were simple but just really well executed. So if you're interested in narrative content and you haven't seen that, I would encourage you to give that one a go. It's also an episodic sort of piece as well, so it works quite well as episodes and a story that unfolds. So yeah. Right, thank you very much. I would like to open this up to the floor. We have a few minutes for questions if anybody has questions for them. There you go.
Well, I wanted to ask you, now that the virtual reality, we are going to direction to improve our world in a way, or look at, right? I mean, the things that are now building in the sector are how to make our world better in a way. I was wondering, have you seen projects that are related to the increased density of information that we're going to have with the virtual world? Because now we're restricted by our senses in a way to receive the information. But with the virtual reality, probably we'll be able to have much denser content, and this way increase the speed, for example, for learning. Or
do you mean sort of data visualization type of application?
Yes, and also from another perspective, do you think that this will make some of our, for example, the language problem at some point wouldn't be so necessary, because you'll be able to receive the information in another way? Have you heard about projects that are going into that direction, about looking at the virtual reality not from a human perspective as all the things that restrict us in the real world, we're trying to send them back to the virtual world to have the same restrictions in all.
Any thoughts about that? Any sort of augmented world applications that dealing with data visualization?
Yeah, surprisingly little actually. I know there's a lot of people who've been experimenting with data visualization in 3D, essentially, is what you're talking about, being able to walk around data sets. And it would be obvious that there would be some advantages in doing that. I don't know what we mean about replacing the language. I think language is a very natural way for us to communicate. And I think a lot with VR experiences, it is about finding human ways of us sort of getting information and then interacting with that information. There's been research around sort of memory and VR, which has suggested that we retain information better in VR. And one of the theories behind that is that our brains are wired to remember stuff based on locations from evolutionary reasons. So I don't think I've really answered the question yet. I don't think or getting any closer to, I'm afraid. Someone rescue me.
So I think one of the interesting things that I learned a term the other day that I hadn't looked at was the generation alpha. So apparently what my kids are, and so one of the things I think is really interesting when you talk about lots of different use cases for VR is the fact that, you know, my 6 and 3 year olds, they now see VR as something completely normal. You know, it's completely. You know, the first time they put a headset on, they look behind them. You know, they're not like my dad, who, as you say, just looks straight out in front of them. And so you think about how the world around them is going to affect, like, their propensity to use this technology. When, you know, you see photos today of people using the Oculus Go in the dentist in order to help distract them from pain, or, you know, they'll be using like Google Glass if they become shelf stackers in an Amazon warehouse, or you know, when they want to go and buy a property, they're going to end up potentially using the headset to view it, or looking before they go to buy a holiday. Or so there's going to be this really interesting generation that grow up as these sort of immersive content natives. And I think when you're talking about all the different types of content that people can use in education and everything else, I think that's where you get this sum of this virtual world. It's this world, but it's the fact that you use it in so many different places.
Yeah. Great, thanks. A couple more questions. I think we've taken maybe 2. I can see 3 hands, so we'll do those 3.
So hi, we are a creative technology solutions company based on VR. So we did a solution for one of the biggest MNCs in India, and that was basically an HR induction, experience. So basically business induction. So that company is into 15 different, businesses, right from steel to salt to automotive. So everything they're wide. They wanted us to build a story around it, like a full VR experience, and put up there for the CEOs as well as the new trainees.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest problem that we had is that obviously the user experience and locomotion. So while the new users could teleport and they could point at things, the CEOs were like, "What is this? Like, I can't even point at things." And we had to completely remove the teleport. So got really difficult. So how do you tackle these sort of problems when it comes to the scale?
Locomotion is one of the single most difficult things to tackle in VR, because get it wrong and people are sick, get it wrong and people are confused, and so we've got a prototype that we're working on where on one thumbstick you're using your one controller you're using teleporting and the other controller uses a thumbstick. We give them both and then we just warn them that they really should teleport, because only some people are able to have first-person movement and it not churn their stomach. And generally, what we find is that people try the first-person movement and very quickly decide that they want to start teleporting.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same experience, pretty much removed sometimes that control for some audience groups. Just redesign the experience.
We completely give up on the teleportation, and what we did is the pointer. We used the same pointer to teleport. So we had hotspots and places, and it was really sad that using HTC Vive, we had to put up hotspots around the place.
Yeah. So.
I would say, from my experience, I think with any experience, the onboarding and offboarding process around your experience is super important and often undervalued.
Absolutely.
People put all their effort into making the experience and are so, I've been there myself and you're so pleased with it, and then you watch somebody get in it and they don't know and they're not doing it right, and it's slightly crushing.
Yeah.
I think if you nail the onboarding, but welcoming them into it, getting them to play with it before they even get into the main thing, and similarly offboarding as well. Welcome back to the real world, but do that gently. I think that's really important, and I think we need to spend a bit more effort collectively on that.
I did a couple of experiences where we modelled the space you're in when you put on the headset. So one was in the Barbican. And so you put a headset and we modelled everything around you, so you felt like you were back in the Barbican. Obviously the people had disappeared. And then we started to play around with the objects around and they started to morph and change. And we found that's a really nice way to kind of break those boundaries between going from the real to the virtual.
Nice. Okay, 2 more questions. We've got 5 minutes, so we'll be quick. So here first.
Yeah, we're here today to talk about creative content and content production, but there are areas of VR that really could perhaps make more money for the creators. You mentioned literature already is potentially a big area, both in terms of visualization to help doctors, but also areas like palliative care, where VR has been used, but also retail. It must be a really big potential for retail. So which other sort of areas do you think you could really explore in terms of use of VR, in your opinions?
I'd say ARs. So if you look at Amazon, they sort of sneaked it out, but on certain product pages, they now have an AR product, and so you can hold your camera up to your thing using AR kit, press a button, and out comes the teddy bear, and you know exactly how big it is. So then you're getting the right piece. So I think AR for retail is probably going to be more significant than VR to begin with.
I think we've been talking about sort of B2C content mostly within this session, but which is one area where you're obviously going to get adoption of this kind of tech. But obviously, another major one is where there are specific areas where you can create value. So training obviously is a major one of those. Education is another major one, where there are opportunities to commercialize, I don't know, perhaps quicker than in terms of going out to a mass audience, if you can find a specific industry application for some of this tech, and that seems to be coming.
Yeah, and that to discuss what we see actually a lot of this. We see a lot of different applications, and we do a lot of work with the manufacturing industry as well, and we see a lot of applications coming through there. We've got like 2 minutes left, so I want to make sure we squeeze in this question at the end.
Sure. I had an opinion about VR content. Okay, there was a question about applications. Yeah. In the VR world, I believe the construct and the rules are very different. The rules that apply to our real world don't apply in the VR world. I have seen applications where phobias, fears, inhibitions have been trained very effectively. There's a popular TV show called Altered Carbon on Netflix. Okay, there's an interrogation scene in the VR construct. Yeah, they connect the brain into VR and interrogate in VR because the rules are different. It's more effective. I just want to help by sharing that opinion. I had a quick question for you. If you can you think of or explain any applications in art and culture using VR, like creating art in VR or AR? I'm very curious.
I can't off the top of my head, but I know that there are a few, and there are definitely artists who are looking at that as a medium.
I can answer that. I mean, there's just quite a few creation project. Tilt Brush is the most well-known of that, where they basically let you to sculpt or paint in a 3D space by walking around it. And there's Google Blocks. I mean, I think there's about 6 or 7 off the top of my head that can do that. They're really easy to use. They're really great. They're getting more and more powerful. You can do animations on them. You can export into different formats. You can share them with other people. You can work on things together with other people. There's a lot there. And obviously that's still quite a narrow focus on what VR art is. That kind of assumes that art is in VR is something that you look and you walk around and you look at, which because we've created VR experiences that go to art galleries, we believe they're experiences. They're not virtual objects.
AR art would be more effective.
Yeah, I mean we've talked to clients about AR. I mean with AR art. There's lots of things you can do there. You could augment an existing object, a painting, let it come to life. You could have purely augmented pieces that evolve and animate them. Again, I think it's better not to think too narrowly about this and really think about what is the purpose? What's the purpose of art?
That's the panel session.
But yes,
I think we have got to round up there. I can see another question, but maybe you could come to the front after and ask. Thank you so much for coming. If just to mention, if we've been doing some research at Digital Catapult about some more of Sam's research on audiences and also about emerging genres and formats, which we'll be releasing online at the end of the month, and we'll also be having an event on the 20th of June. So if you're interested in that, then look us up. You should find us on Eventbrite. Thank you so much for coming, and